The containment facility's fluorescent lights hummed like dying insects as Dr. Celine Rivers was dragged down the metallic corridor. Her wrists bore fresh bruises from the restraints, but her dark eyes remained steady, calculating. The facility's walls were lined with observation windows, each one revealing another imprisoned creature. From across the galaxy, some paced restlessly, others lay motionless, all bearing the hollow look of the broken. "You should have just complied, Doctor," sneered Commander Voss, his cybernetic implants gleaming under the harsh lighting. "Your little moral crusade ends here." Celine had refused to participate in the neural extraction experiments. She'd watched too many sentient beings have their consciousness torn apart. In the name of research, when she'd tried to sabotage the lab, they'd caught her red-handed, standing over the destroyed equipment with a plasma torch still smoking in her grip. "The pit has never failed us," continued Dr. Harkin, the facility's lead researcher, his pale hands clasped behind his back. 47 previous subjects, 47 perfect demonstrations of natural selection. His smile was cold as surgical. "Steel, you'll make 48. The massive blast doors groaned open, revealing a circular arena 30 meters across. The walls rose 15 meters high, smooth as glass, impossible to climb. Ancient scratches marked the lower section's claw marks, impact craters, evidence of desperate final moments. The floor was stained with substances Celine preferred not to identify. "Any last words, Doctor?" Voss pushed her toward the edge. Celine looked down into the arena, then back at her captors. "You're going to regret this more than I am." They shoved her. She fell, landed hard on the arena floor, rolling to absorb the impact. Above her, the circular opening sealed with a resonant clang. Emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red. Then she heard it, a sound like tectonic plates shifting, breathing that moved air like wind through caverns. From the shadows at the arena's far end, something immense began to move. The apex predator emerged slowly, deliberately, as if savoring the moment. Curran stood for meters tall, its obsidian carapace reflecting the red lights like black mirrors. 6 limbs ending in razor talons, elongated skull housing intelligence, ancient and alien, and eyes like molten amber that seemed to peer directly into her soul. Bioluminescent veins pulsed along its spine, casting eerie patterns on the walls. The creature paused, studying this new offering. Celine remained perfectly still, her heart hammering but her breathing controlled. She'd spent her career studying behavioral patterns of apex species. Fear was prey language. Aggression was challenger language. But calm was something else entirely. Minutes passed. Neither moved. Above them, she could hear agitated voices, the guards expecting screams, expecting the swift brutality they'd witnessed 47 times before. Instead, they got silence, waiting. A predator and its supposed prey locked in a moment that stretched like eternity. Dr. Marcus Webb pressed his face against the observation window, his breath fogging the reinforced glass. "Why isn't it attacking?" His voice cracked with nervous tension. As the facility's behavioral specialist, he'd never witnessed hesitation from Curran, not once in 3 years of feeding it prisoners. "Give it time," Voss muttered, but uncertainty crept into his voice. The creature's probably just savoring the moment. Below, Celine slowly lowered herself into a sitting position, never breaking eye contact with Curran. The predator's massive head tilted, studying this unprecedented behavior. She began to speak, her voice barely audible through the arena's audio sensors. "I know you understand me," she whispered in standard, then switched to the clicking consonants of Zenthri, then the harmonic tones of Valdorian. "I've seen the neural scans they've done on you. Your brain shows activity patterns I've only seen in species with advanced linguistic capabilities." Curran's bioluminescent veins pulsed brighter, a pattern Celine recognized from her xenobiology studies. Curiosity, not aggression. The creature took one massive step forward, its talons scarring the arena floor, but stopped again when Celine remained motionless. "They think you're just an animal," she continued, her voice gaining strength. "But you've been listening to them, haven't you? Learning their language, their patterns, waiting." A low rumble emanated from Curran's chest, not quite a growl, but something deeper, more complex. Celine had heard similar vocalizations, from the Corvin whales of Epsilon Prime. It was communication. Dr. Harkin's face had gone pale at the monitors. This is impossible. The creature doesn't communicate. It kills. It's what we designed it for. Designed? Webb spun around. You told us it was captured from the Vorthan Nebula. We enhanced certain aspects, Harkin admitted reluctantly. Increased its aggression, its hunting instincts. It was necessary for our weapons program. In the arena, Kern had moved closer still, now only 3 meters from Celine. This close. She could see the intelligence burning in those amber eyes and something else, pain, loneliness, the same hollow look she'd seen in the other imprisoned creatures, magnified by the creature's obvious self-awareness. They hurt you too, she said softly, extending one hand palm up in a gesture of offering. Made you into something you weren't supposed to be, but you remember who you were before, don't you? Kern's great head lowered until its snout was nearly touching her outstretched palm. The bioluminescent patterns shifted to deeper blues and purples, colors Celine instinctively associated with sorrow. When the creature spoke, its voice was like distant thunder. Kern remembers the deep songs of home, the observation. Deck erupted in chaos. Voss grabbed his comm unit, shouting orders for containment protocols. Webb stumbled backward, his mind reeling. But Harkin stood frozen, watching his perfect weapon reveal itself as so much more than a weapon. Below, Celine smiled as she gently touched the side of Kern's massive head. Then let's find a way to sing them again. Asterisk the facility's emergency. Alarms shrieked through the corridors as Director Catherine Vale strode into the observation deck, her military bearing cutting through the chaos like a blade. Her silver hair was pulled back severely, and her augmented left eye glowed with tactical displays. Report, she commanded, silencing the room. The subject has made contact with the specimen. Dr. Harkin said carefully, his hands trembling as he adjusted the monitor controls. They appear to be communicating. Vale studied the scene below. Celine sat cross-legged beside Kern's massive form, her hand resting on the creature's scaled flank. The predator's bioluminescent patterns had shifted to soft golden hues, and its breathing had become deep and rhythmic. How long has this been going on? 47 minutes. Webb answered, checking his chronometer. Sir, the behavioral patterns we're seeing, they're consistent with advanced social bonding. The creature's stress hormones have dropped to baseline levels for the first time since containment. Vale's expression remained impassive, but Celine could see calculations running behind her eyes. Below, Kern began to hum a deep, resonant sound that seemed to emanate from its entire body. Celine responded with a melody she'd learned from the crystalline beings of Andromeda 7, their voices harmonizing impossibly across species barriers. Beautiful, Webb whispered, and immediately flushed at his own sentiment. Dangerous. Vale corrected. Dr. Harkin, explain to me how a creature designed for maximum lethality is now singing lullabies, the genetic modifications we implemented. Enhanced aggression, yes, but we couldn't eliminate the base personality matrix without destroying cognitive function. It appears Dr. Rivers has found a way to access the original neural pathways. In the arena, Celine was learning about Kern's passed through fragments of shared memory and careful questioning. Kern had been a guardian of the deep archives on Vorthos Prime, a keeper of ancient knowledge and songs that preserved the cultural memory of an entire species. The capture and modification had been meant to erase that identity, but consciousness, Celine realized, was more resilient than the facility's scientists had imagined. My people's songs, Kern rumbled, they flow like the thermal currents of the home world. Each melody carries the wisdom of generations. I had forgotten, until your voice reminded me how to listen. What did they take from you? Celine asked. Gently, the song of beginnings, the harmony of stars, the lament for the lost. Each phrase was accompanied by shifting patterns of light along Kern's spine. They wanted only the battle roar, the hunt cry. But those are not who I am, above them. Vale had seen enough. Terminate the experiment. Gas them both. Director. If I may, Webb began. No discussion. This relationship represents a complete failure of containment protocols. If the specimen can form bonds, it can potentially be turned against us. But as the gas jets began to hiss, Curran's head snapped upward with predatory alertness. The creature's bioluminescence flared. Bright red, not sorrow now, but fury. A roar erupted from its throat that shook the entire facility, and its massive tail whipped against the arena walls, with enough force to crack the reinforced concrete. Celine. Curran's voice carried a new edge. They seek to harm you. I will not permit this. Asterisk. The gas dissipated harmlessly around them. Curran's modified biology included resistance to most chemical agents, but more importantly, the creature's protective instincts had been triggered not by its programming, but by genuine emotional attachment. Stand down, Vale shouted into her comm. All personnel, maintain safe distance from the containment area. We have a new variable to consider. For the first time since her capture, Celine smiled with genuine warmth. She wasn't alone anymore, and judging by the fear now evident on her captors' faces, they were beginning to realize they'd created something far more dangerous than a perfect predator. They'd created a perfect partnership. 3 days past intense standoff. The facility's routine had ground to a halt, as every available resource was focused on the unprecedented situation in Containment Arena 7. Celine and Curran had settled into an almost domestic rhythm, sharing meals. Curran was surprisingly omnivorous, exchanging stories and creating new harmonies that seemed to resonate through the facility's very bones. Dr. Sarah Chen, the facility's chief psychologist, had been brought in to observe and analyze. She stood beside Director Vale, studying behavioral readouts that defied every model in her database. The neural synchronization is remarkable, Chen reported, highlighting brainwave patterns on her tablet. They're developing what we might call a shared consciousness state. During their musical interactions, it's unlike anything I've seen in interspecies communication. Can we weaponize it? Vale asked bluntly. Director, with respect, I think you're asking the wrong question. What we're witnessing isn't just communication, it's healing. Both subjects show dramatic improvements in psychological markers. Dr. Rivers' cortisol levels have normalized despite her captivity, and the creature's aggression indices have dropped to almost negligible levels. Vale's augmented eye zoomed in on the pair below. Celine was attempting to teach Curran human concepts of humor, while the massive creature shared memories of Vorthan philosophy through patterns of light and harmonics. It was, she had to admit, almost beautiful to watch. The board won't care about healing, Vale said finally. They invested billions in creating the perfect bioweapon. What am I supposed to tell them? That our apex predator prefers poetry to killing? The question was answered when alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Commander Voss burst onto the observation deck, his face grim. Director, we have a situation. The hegemony fleet has found us. 3 battle cruisers dropped out of hyperspace 10 minutes ago. They're demanding the return of their cultural artifact. Vale's blood chilled. The Vorthan hegemony had been searching for Curran for 3 years, ever since the creature had been taken from their home world. If they'd finally tracked him here, put me through to their command ship, she ordered. The main display flickered to life, revealing the stern visage of hegemony Admiral Korvuk. His scaled features showed the controlled fury of his species, and his voice carried harmonics that resonated with unconscious authority. Human facility, he intoned, you hold sacred. Archivist Curran V. Ithol of the Deep Memory. His song Silence has been felt across 17 systems. Return him, and your deaths will be swift. In the arena below, Curran's head had snapped up at the familiar harmonics. His bioluminescence flared with patterns Celine had never seen, complex cascades of gold and silver that seemed to tell entire stories. My people, he whispered, and his voice carried longing sharp as a blade. They remember me. Celine felt her heart break a little. She'd known this moment would come, but she'd hoped. You should go to them and leave you here, never. Curran's voice carried finality. We are bonded now, Celine, singer of new songs. Where one goes, both go. Above them, Admiral Korvuk continued his demands, unaware that his most sacred archivist was listening. We know what you have done to him, what modifications you have forced upon his pure form. This sacrilege demands blood price. Vale looked at Chen, at Webb, at Harkin, all the architects of this disaster. Then she looked down at Celine and Curran, whose bond had become something neither species had expected. Open a channel to the arena, she ordered quietly. The calm system crackled to life, and suddenly Curran's voice filled both the facility and the hegemony ship's song of homecoming. That had been 3 years in the making, carrying all the pain and joy and growth of his captivity. When the song ended, Admiral Korvac's expression had transformed from fury to wonder. Impossible, he breathed. Curran V. Ithol sings with new harmonies, the deep memory. It has grown. The standoff lasted through the night. Hegemony ships held position while frantic negotiations took place across species lines. Celine and Curran remained in the arena, but now it felt less like a prison and more like the eye of a cosmic storm. Admiral Korvac had insisted on direct communication with Curran, and the conversation that followed challenged everything both species thought. They understood about consciousness, loyalty, and growth. Sacred Archivist, Korvac's voice carried formal reverence through the arena's speakers. The deep memory calls you home. Your song threads have been silent too long. The archive grieves. Curran's response carried harmonics that made the facilities walls hum. Admiral Singer, I have learned new songs in the darkness, songs of other species, other wisdoms. The archive must grow, or it becomes only echo of what was. Celine watched the exchange with growing understanding. She'd thought this was about rescue, about returning home, but for Curran, it was about expanding the very concept of what home could mean. The human singer, Curran continued, she teaches songs of healing where we knew only songs of war, songs of hope where we knew only songs of survival. These must be preserved. Director Vale found herself in the unprecedented position of having her most valuable asset actively negotiate for his freedom and for the freedom of a woman she'd condemned to death. Dr. Chen approached the observation window, her tablet displaying readings that defied comprehension. Director, you need to see this. The quantum resonance patterns between them, they're not just bonded. They're creating something entirely new. A hybrid consciousness that maintains individual identity while sharing experiences across species barriers. What are you saying? I'm saying they've accidentally achieved what the Unity Project has been trying to accomplish for decades. True interspecies mental synthesis without loss of self. Below, Celine had made her own decision, standing beside Curran's massive form. She looked up at the observation deck and spoke clearly into the sensors. Director Vale, I formally request asylum with the Vorthan hegemony. As Curran's bonded partner, I believe I have legal standing under the Galactic Consciousness Accords. The implications hit Vale like a physical blow. If the hegemony accepted Celine's request, they'd be obligated to protect her as they would any Vorthan citizen. More importantly, they'd have legitimate grounds to demand full disclosure of the facility's research. Admiral Korvac's response came swift and ceremonial. Celine, singer of new songs, the hegemony recognizes your bond claim. You are welcome in our archives to teach and to learn. But Curran had one more surprise. His bioluminescence shifted to patterns of deep contemplation as he addressed both his people and his captors. I choose neither return nor rescue, he announced, his voice carrying finality. I choose transformation. The deep memory must not remain deep. It must rise, spread, grow. I will carry the archive to other worlds, other species. And Celine Singer will help me teach the songs of unity. The silence that followed was profound. Then Admiral Korvac began to laugh, a harmonic sound that carried joy across star systems. The archivist chooses the path of living memory. So be it. We will provide a ship, supplies, protection. But Curran V. Ithol, his voice grew serious. Remember that some songs, once sung in the void, echo forever. Director Vale realized she'd lost not just the specimen, not just the research, but the entire paradigm that had driven the facility's existence. In trying to create the perfect weapon, they'd accidentally midwifed the birth of something that might change the galaxy. As blast doors opened for the first time in 3 years, and hegemony personnel entered to escort their sacred archivist to freedom, Vale watched Celine and Curran walk together toward the transport ships. They threw her in with the apex predator. Minutes later, they'd created legends,